Hello, everybody. Welcome to my very first Instagram Live. And this is the first of two trainings on rest cycles. I am Carly. I'm founder of Full Expression Fitness, and I specialize in adventure sport performance and movement training. And I want to first thank you so much for tuning in. And if you are watching, feel free to drop me a little hello in the comments so I know you're around. Even if you're watching this at a later date or time, let me know you stopped by. I would love to know who's watching this stuff so I can create genuinely useful content for you in the future as well. And again, my name is Carly, and I'll be talking to you about rest cycles and what a rest cycle can do for both your recovery and your sport performance. So let's go ahead and dive in. Whether you're an adventure athlete, a team sport athlete, a dancer, or a gym rat, there's probably gonna come a time when your progress slows or even stops. And no matter how much you train or how hard you train, you just can't seem to get better. And maybe you're also experiencing frequent or recurring injury. Needless to say, this plateau in performance can be very frustrating and very discouraging. I'm here today to tell you to take heart, because a rest cycle might be just what you need to break through. So my goal in this two-part training is to show you how rest cycles can help you overcome plateaus in performance and recover from long-term fatigue, and to learn to work with your recurring pain or injury in novel ways. So in this video, part one, we're going to talk about rest cycle basics and why rest cycles are a crucial piece in our sport and athletic journey. So let's dive in. The first thing that I want to address is the simple question of what is a rest cycle? In a recent poll on my Instagram story, I asked the question, have you ever heard of a rest cycle? And about 70% of you had not. And so let's take a moment here just to outline what a rest cycle is. So I want to make it clear that a rest cycle is just a type of training cycle. So just like your regular training cycle, a rest cycle follows a plan, works towards a goal, and prioritizes other health habits like sleep and nutrition. But a rest cycle is different from a regular training cycle in a couple of ways. And the first way is through timing. So typically, a training cycle is best to do before a performance phase. So a typical training cycle would happen before going on a climbing trip, for example. However, a rest cycle is best to do after a performance or heavy training phase. So for example, you would take a rest cycle at the end of ski season or at the end of a max lifts phase of strength training. And the other thing that makes rest cycles different from other training cycles are the goals. So in other training cycles, typically your goals are going to focus on performance outcomes. So for example, after this training cycle, I want to run a 5K, or I want to land a double axel, or I want to climb 513. These are all performance-oriented goals. In a rest cycle, our goals typically focus on things like pain reduction, resilience building, and movement fundamentals. So goals from a rest cycle might be something like rehabbing an injury or just getting more comfortable going upside down. I also want to clarify that a rest cycle is not the same thing as time off. So a rest cycle and time off are similar in one way, and that is they both temporarily reduce or eliminate sport participation or training intensity throughout the phase, but they're not really similar to time off in any other way. Like when you take time off, you're typically not following a plan or a program. you don't really set goals or have progress aspirations. And when you take time off, other health habits like sleep and nutrition, they're not necessarily prioritized. And you don't really expect to have any skill or strength gains occur during your time off period. During a rest cycle, however, you do follow a plan, and this plan should progress you towards a goal. For example, the goal of pain reduction. And during a rest cycle, it is important to prioritize other health habits. And finally, you do have skill and strength gains that are expected to occur over the course of and in conclusion to the rest cycle. So now that we've answered the question, like, what is a rest cycle, which it's just a type of training cycle, I want to talk about who could benefit from a rest cycle, like which athletes would be most benefited from taking a rest cycle. And in truth, all athletes would benefit from a properly timed rest cycle, but seasonal athletes in particular, so athletes who have a predictable competition season, or athletes who are limited to certain times of the year due to weather, these athletes, they already have a natural place for rest cycles in their training plans. And the first and most obvious sign that these athletes are due for a rest cycle is the fact that it's the end of your sports season. Like, for example, I took a climbing-focused rest cycle during the snowy months this winter, and if you can find a natural break in your sports season, it's always a good idea to place a rest cycle at the end of it. So again, seasonal athletes are kind of set up to have a natural place for rest cycles in their training plans. But even if it's not the end of your season, your body might be telling you it's time for a rest cycle. So if you're dealing with a frustrating string of injuries while you're participating in your sport, or if you've got recurring injury, chronic pain, these are all signs that it's time for a rest cycle. And the nice thing about rest cycles is if you identify the need for a rest cycle early enough in your season, you're still gonna have time to return to your sport and be much better off for it. And the third instance in which it would be beneficial to take a rest cycle is during a regular training cycle. If you're feeling burnt out, or if you're training hard but you're failing to see any results, it's time for a rest cycle. So not only at the end of your season, but also if you're in the middle of a bout of training and you're like, I'm not seeing any results, I'm working really hard here, chances are it's because it's time for you to take a training rest cycle. And rest cycles are very accommodating to all of those people who love to train, because a rest cycle is, again, just another variation of a training cycle. Like, you get to have a goal that you work towards every day, and you have something to show for it at the end. So I want to give you guys now a quick summary of what we covered today. The first is answering the simple question of what is a rest cycle. And a rest cycle is just a type of training cycle. It includes goals, a plan, and a specific period of time that the cycle is going to last for. Oftentimes, our goals are focused in particular on rehabilitating an injury, improving our movement skills, and these sorts of things. And although any athlete is going to benefit from a rest cycle, seasonal athletes have a natural place for a rest cycle at the end of the competition or performance season. But even if it's not the end of your sports season and you're in the middle of a bout of training, you're going to benefit from a rest cycle if you're experiencing recurring injury, burnout, or performance plateaus. And so at this point, I'm wondering, have you ever completed a rest cycle? Like, is this something that you've ever done either in name and with intention or kind of by circumstance? And I'm also wondering, like, how might a rest cycle help you accomplish your goals this year? Like, I genuinely love to hear from you. And I'd also love to answer any questions that came up during this lesson. So feel free to leave me a comment, shoot me a message, let's chat. And if you found this helpful, I hope you can come back for tomorrow, 3 p.m. Mountain Time again for part 2. And tomorrow, we're going to talk about how you can craft your own rest cycle for your particular recovery and performance goals. So I want to thank you all so much for joining again and hope to see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Toodaloo. Except I don't know how to end this. Just here?